My name is Frank Schaeffer. I grew up in the evangelical right wing. My evangelist father, Francis Schaeffer, was one of the architects of the religious right that went on and began so many culture wars here in the U.S. That then finally resulted in the election of Donald Trump. When COVID-19 broke a little over a year ago worldwide, Donald Trump called it a hoax and politicized the response. Evangelical Christians, who are the Republican Party today, the only real base they have, decided that wearing face masks and shutting schools, shutting churches, protecting others' health was somehow something only liberal Democrats would do. And the response was politicized. Fast forward to the present, and Pew just did a new poll showing that 40% of evangelical Republicans, 40% of evangelicals that is, say they will most definitely never get the vaccine. That means that every time you walk past an evangelical church, college, high school, primary school, you are in fact walking past a COVID-19 hotspot. It might not be an exaggeration to say that the evangelicals are refusing the vaccine in a way that will change the terminology. You know, Trump falsely said that it was the China virus, trying to stir up hate against Asian Americans, Chinese people, Koreans, anyone who looked Asian, and of course the Chinese themselves. Now, though, with 40% of evangelicals saying they most definitely will never get the vaccine, the COVID epidemic will soon be relabeled as the evangelical virus, not out of prejudice, but simply truthfully representing the largest block of Americans who refuse the vaccine and become a danger to others. Now, with Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court and the Republican judges that the Federalist Society across America got Trump to nominate to the federal bench, as well as the Supreme Court, suddenly religious civil liberties are now the excuse to prosecute the far-right religious right agenda across America. It's your religious civil liberty to discriminate against gay people and transgender people. It is your religious civil liberty to fire gay professors from Christian colleges, your religious civil liberty to refuse to wear masks or to meet when your governor has asked you not to meet during a pandemic. Now it's going to be a religious civil liberty to refuse the vaccine, to refuse vaccine passports, or to be identified as someone who did not vaccinate. That means that, in fact, evangelical colleges, churches, schools are going to become centers of what really will amount to religiously inspired bioterror. Now, my son was in the Marine Corps and fought in Afghanistan to try to quell the terrorism of the Taliban and later ISIS and all these other groups. And what the American government was most fearful of and trained their Marines to look out for, especially my son who was in signals intelligence, to keep an eye out for, was bioweapons and bioterror. This was the greatest threat. Now, we have had over 500,000 deaths in America that, had they been achieved by a bioweapon, would have meant that we would have nuked the country that launched that. No question about it. It would be that seriously regarded. We would not send a few Marines in or invade. We would nuke them if a bioweapon went off, for instance, in Los Angeles or Washington that killed 500,000 people. Now, COVID is not a bioweapon. COVID is a natural phenomena. But if a group of people in our country refuse to be vaccinated and become themselves agents of bioterror by being the last great super spreaders who kill other Americans who are innocent, threaten our economy, evangelicals will be labeled properly as bioterrorists. Now, Billy Graham's son, Franklin Graham, I grew up knowing Billy Graham met with him many times over the years with my father, Francis Schaeffer, the evangelical leader. I knew Franklin when he was younger. Franklin realizes that the Trump faction of the evangelical movement that he guides, along with people like Ralph Reed, who have become the servants of Donald Trump, that he's lost control of it. He had to go on Facebook and beg people to get the vaccine. You know, that's kind of like begging people who become radicalized in some political movement not to be violent when you lose control of them. And now Franklin is begging them to be sensible and get the shot, because he realizes that when evangelicals are rebranding themselves as bioterrorists, as they are now, that it will completely and terminally destroy their reputation as the last holdout group that threaten other Americans, not a few, not one, not two, but hundreds of thousands of us, by keeping the virus alive in their communities. Evangelical schools, high schools, colleges, churches are going to have to be shut down or kept open by Amy Coney Barrett and the rest of the right-wing, far-right religious fanatics on the Supreme Court and other courts that Trump appointed from the list of the Federalist Society that's taken 40 years to groom these people to go to the federal bench and do what politics can't do, and that is overrule the will of the people. There is going to be a collision course, I predict, between those of us who want to stay alive and send our children to school, the evangelical community insisting they can be exempt from science and fact, and the courts trying to impose a version of religious freedom that puts thousands of Americans' lives at risk. Evangelical Christians who follow Trump are re-identifying themselves as bioterrorists. My name is Frank Schaeffer.